All right, well, good morning, everyone. By my clock here, it says it is 10 a.m., and we're going to get started here. Welcome to the Fire Officer 2 Train the Trainer. My name is Pete Silva. I'm currently the Education Director for the next hour and a half or so, and then after that, I am done. Many of you know that I'm moving on to a new position at Madison College, teaching full-time, and I'll be leaving this position as of today. So it is my honor to present this final Train the Trainer that I'll be presenting, and hopefully you'll get all the information you need. Thank you all for muting your phones, and if you do have any questions as we go along, please feel free to unmute and interrupt me and ask the question so you don't forget. This Train the Trainer is being recorded, so for those instructors that couldn't make the live version here, I would expect that the recorded version will be put up onto our instructor resource site either tomorrow or Monday. It takes a little bit to get it transcribed into the proper format and stuff, but we'll get it up onto the instructor resource site so those that missed can view it, and if you need to view it again, it's there for you. The Fire Officer 2 course. First of all, I want to thank the committee members that worked on this update here. We've been working on this course for a little bit over a year now, and trying to get it to the point where it fits both our IFSAC requirements, but also the intent of the NFPA standard. So I want to thank those committee members. We've got Chief Aaron Harris from Middleton Fire District here near Madison. We've got Chief Bob Stedman, the Chief of the South Shore Fire Department, down in the southeast corner of the state. Chief Shannon Young from Appleton Fire Department, Chief Matt Herder from the Kenosha Fire Department, and retired Chief Ted Harris. So I want to send a shout-out to those committee members. They worked very hard on putting this together. I've already had some very positive feedback regarding our Fire Officer 1 course that was put into place this past summer. Just got some very positive feedback from students that took the exam, both on the course itself as well as the new practical examination, certification examination. So I hope that we will get the same results from this particular level, but let's move on. So the reason that we are doing this update, a couple different reasons. First of all, we had a 2014 edition of NFPA 1021, the standard for Fire Officer Professional Qualifications, came out in 2014, so it was time for us to update to this standard. So that is one of the reasons why we have this new change, this update. We are going to be using the Jones and Bartlett Fire Officer Principles and Practices Enhanced 3rd Edition. This is the only textbook. We're not using an IFSA textbook. It's only validated to the Jones and Bartlett textbook. So please make sure after the first of the year, when this goes into effect, that your students will have this 3rd edition. Now, if you have a student that has the 3rd edition but it doesn't say enhanced, that's fine. The only difference between the regular edition and the enhanced 3rd edition is that the enhanced edition has additional online resources for both the students and for the instructor. So if a student should happen to come in and they don't have it that says enhanced, don't freak out. They can still get all the same information. They just won't have access to that online resources. With this update, with this change, we are going to have a brand new practical exam for this level. So the old exam is going to be out. Some components of it are still in, but it is a wholesale update of our certification practical exam for the Officer 2 level, and we'll go through that process here in a little bit. One thing that is a big change for this level is that there are going to be quite a few portfolio requirements. Now, our IFSAC accreditation, which I'll mention again, but we are submitting both our Fire Officer 1 and Fire Officer 2 courses to IFSAC for accreditation, and we had to hit all of the JPRs, all the job performance requirements of 1021, and some of the only ways that we could do that without having a day-long practical exam was to go through portfolios. So we've got, I believe we have 9 different requirements for the portfolio, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but we'll look at the list of them in just a few minutes. There is still a mentoring project. It actually was previously called a job shadow, but because mentoring is kind of the new buzzword in the fire service, we have changed that project to reflect that. So pretty much is kind of the same as the old job shadow. It's just a mentoring project where they're going to have someone at their own department or somewhere else mentor them in some of the JPRs that's required. There is going to be one paper. One paper is going to be due during this course. It's a 5-page paper, and the paper is going to be written about the mentoring project, what the students gained from this mentoring project, how it may benefit them in their role or benefit their department. Also, we are asking them to write about 2 or 3 JPRs that they are working on during this mentoring project. So that 5-page paper is going to be a requirement for them and bring it to the exam, which I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. There's a lot of information in this in the textbook and in the lesson plans about the NIMS process, Incident Command. So you yourself as an instructor should be very well versed in the NIMS process and be prepared to discuss that with your students. Another document that you're going to need to be aware of as well as your students is NFPA 1600. There is reference to 1600 quite a few times during the lesson plans. So I would strongly encourage you to access the NFPA standard on nfpa.org. You can't, if you're not a member, you can't download the standard, but you can view it for free. You just can't download it or print it unless you do have a membership for NFPA. So please make sure that you are aware of what is all involved in 1600 so you're prepared to discuss it during the class. Investigation scenarios. One of the practical exams is going to have fire investigation. So there are going to be some scenarios that are going to be delivered by the state reps at the exams. So again, you should be prepared as an instructor to kind of identify major items that are going to be needed to understand investigations. And as I previously mentioned, both of these courses have been submitted to IFSAC for accreditation, and we are hoping that we will get word back possibly by March or April as far as whether we are granted this accreditation. But what I can tell you is that anyone that has currently that's gone through the brand new Fire Officer 1 course that began this summer, and anyone that takes this course starting in after the first of the year, anyone that takes and completes successfully becomes certified in both Fire Officer and Fire Officer 1 and 2 will be able, once we get the accreditation from IFSAC, those that receive the certificates from this particular from these updates will be able to ask for that IFSAC seal. So if somebody that became certified, those that just I think MATC just had their practical exam and their written exam, so those certification results will be coming in very shortly for them. Those students will receive a certificate, but without the IFSAC seal. We can't issue the seal until we get authorization from IFSAC. But those that receive that certification with the brand new course, both Fire Officer 1 and 2, once we get that accreditation, we'll be able to, Denise and Sherry here are going to be keeping track of who has issued those certificates, and they will be sent a new certificate with the IFSAC seal. So because they are going through the new process, they are essentially, we are going to grant them the credit of going through the accredited course. Now, if you or anyone else is certified currently as a Fire Officer 1 or Fire Officer 2, you don't obviously have the IFSAC accreditation because they weren't accredited. But once we become accredited, those that are currently certified do have the option of trying to get that IFSAC seal, and all you would have to do is to challenge the written exam. You don't have to challenge the practical exam, you just have to challenge the written exam, and it's a one-time challenge. If you successfully pass that written exam with a 70% or higher, then you will get the IFSAC seal. If you would fail that written exam, then you would have to take the whole course over if you want the IFSAC seal. So obviously if you fail and you don't care if you have the IFSAC seal, it's you're not going to have to go through. You're still considered certified, it's just not with the accreditation. All right, and my computer is starting to freeze up here for some reason. All righty. Some technical difficulties. There we go. All right. I'll wait. The portfolio. Let's talk about the portfolio. There is a checklist. There's going to be a form that's called the portfolio checklist that basically we recommend that either you or the students print off and put on a folder or whatever, however they want to keep track. But as the portfolio items are completed, we would like the instructors to sign off, and let me bring that portfolio checklist up here so you can see that. And I don't have it up here prepared yet, so I apologize. I thought I had it already ready to go, but I did not. We'll look at that in a second then. All right. We'll look at that checklist here once I get open to the implementation guide. I'll show that to you. But at any rate, the portfolio, once these items are collected by the student or they're completed by the student, they're put into their portfolio, they will need to bring all of that portfolio to the examination site, including the 5-page paper. Now, the mentoring project paper is actually going to be graded or basically approved by you, the instructor. You're going to sign off on the state summary form that the 5-page paper was completed using the criteria that we have in our implementation guide. Essentially what we're looking for is a 5-page paper, double-spaced, 1-inch margins, 12-point font, proper grammar, proper punctuation, and the intent of the paper, which is to talk about the project itself as well as the benefits it will hold for the person and their department, as well as discussing the JPRs that they have completed. So we are going to be asking you, the instructor, to check off on the summary form as well as a portfolio checklist, but then they will need to bring that document, that paper, to the practical exam with the rest of the portfolio items. All right, let's talk about the resources now. Hopefully all of you are aware of our instructor resource page of our website, and I will go to it in just a second. But this is where you're going to find all the materials that you need in order to teach this class. A lot of you have been around long enough to remember that we used to send out the disc, the instructor resources disc, from the publisher directly to you, and you would use those. However, we are not sending those discs out any longer. We are putting all the resources here on our website, and so that includes the lesson plans, the PowerPoints, any of the forms that you need, etc. Everything that you need to teach this class is going to be at the instructor resource site. So if you have not been to this site before, I strongly encourage you to take some time to check it out. It's where all of our courses are located, so anything that you need to teach any of our certification courses will be here. On the screen you'll see the page for our instructor resource website. We've got two links. We have our instructor resources, and then we have our fire service coordinator and state representative resources. The instructor resources site is not password protected. Anybody can gain access to it, so you can gain access at any time. The coordinator and state reps resources is a password protected area. And the reason it's password protected is because we have the examination handbooks, the handbooks that are used for conducting our practical exams. Those have some privileged information that we don't want circulating out amongst instructors or students or anything else. basically kind of answer sheets, that type of thing for some of the information that is asked during the practical exam. So that is why that section is password protected. If you have the right to be there, you have the password. If you don't, just the Instructor Resources has pretty much all the same information except that exam handbook. So when you click on the Instructor Resource page link, what's going to come up is a listing of all of our certification courses. So what you're going to do is you're going to scroll down to where it says New Fire Officer 2. You will see that we have a Fire Officer 2 file, and then we have a New Fire Officer 2 file. We have to keep both of those up there because those that are currently going through the Fire Officer 2, we still have some classes that are being run with the old curriculum. We still need the instructors to have those materials. We also still need to have the coordinators and the state reps have access to those materials too, because if they are if they're going through the course now, the next test or the certification exam that they take should be the old exam. So the only people that should be taking the new exam are those that are going through the new course. So those that are currently in the course or maybe completed the course within less than 2 years ago still have the option of being tested under the old exam. So that's why we have both the old information and the new. So when you're looking for the new materials, make sure that you look under the new Fire Officer 2 course section here. Click on that. When you click on that, you're going to come to all of the documents that you need. So starting down below here, we have our implementation guide, which I'll go through in just a moment. That is the kind of the Bible for you as an instructor. That's the guide that you should be following in order to deliver the course properly. We then have a mentoring project document, which is the directions for the mentoring project for both the mentor and the mentee, I guess. The candidate, and the directions on what they need to do there. We have a practical skills exam preview. Now, those of you that teach in the other areas know that for Firefighter 1, Fire 2, and the other courses, we have a practical exam preview, which is good for both the instructor and the students to view, because essentially it's the exam. It's the practical exam. And it gives them resources, it gives them page numbers and chapters in the book where they can find the information that pertain to the particular JPRs and what they should study to prepare for both the written and the practical exam. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. It is basically the exam, but it's missing some privileged information that I was talking about earlier, answers and scenarios, that type of thing. So it's a basic preview of the exam. You can also access the certification preparation guide, which is for the students, and that can be found on our website, under the Fire Service website for our students. So I would encourage you to encourage your students all to either view or download that preparation guide. That's going to help them prepare for both the written and the practical exams. So a very valuable document for your students. You'll see that we have our PowerPoint files and our lesson plan files, which have each lesson plans and PowerPoints for you. We have made some changes to the PowerPoints as well as to the lesson plans, also to kind of Wisconsinize it. We've added some information that is specific to Wisconsin and to the way we do things here in the state. We've reduced some of the content. Actually, it's pretty close. No, I take that back. We didn't do a lot of changes to the actual PowerPoint and the lesson plans there for this particular level. I was thinking of another course that we were updating that we made a lot of changes. Hazmat. I just did the Hazmat webinar yesterday, and so we made a lot of changes to that. So the PowerPoints and the lesson plans are pretty true to the textbook for Jones and Bartlett. Under the forms section, if you click on the forms section, you're going to have quite a few things that are available that the students are going to need and you have access to. Now, all of these forms are also listed in the preparation guide for the students, so they do have access to them. This is just a place for you to find them very quickly rather than going through the implementation guide or the preparation guide. So we've got a template for a budget worksheet, which is one of the portfolio requirements. We've got an equipment list here for the practical exam. So it's just a list for the coordinators, the people that are setting up the practical exam, all the equipment needs that are required for that exam. We've got a firefighter performance appraisal form, which is a template which they're going to need for a portfolio item. Here's the portfolio checklist, and let me just click that open so we can take a look at that very quickly. Wait till it pops up on your screen here. And I was correct in saying that we do have 9 requirements for the portfolios. So here is the list. Here's the checklist that we would like the instructor to sign off when they do have each of these items turned into them for review. So one of the portfolios here is a memo to the chief talking about explaining the benefits of the organization with allied organizations. So it's a memo to the chief that they have to prepare. The next one is develop a policy or procedure. So we have a policy form that's available to the students that they can use, or if they have their own, then they should use their own from their own department. They also have to develop a budget. So we do have a template for a sample budget form that they can use. But again, if they have their own back at their own departments, we would prefer that they use theirs. They're going to have to describe the process of purchasing, soliciting, and awarding bids, and they're going to have to put together a written description of the purchasing process to the chief, essentially a memo to the chief. They're also going to have to prepare a news release, and there's a news release template that they can use or their own. They also have to prepare a report to their supervisor on trends, variances, or other related topics. So they're going to have to write a memo to the chief talking about what the biggest problems in their communities are. They're also going to have to write a memo to the chief explaining a plan to accomplish change within the organization. So, and one last one is analyzing a member's accident, injury, or health exposure history. So they're going to have to write a report to the chief basically recommending actions for an employee that has a history of accidents or injuries on the job. So those are the 9 portfolio items that are required by the students to complete during the course, during those particular lessons, and then bring them to the practical exam. If the student shows up at a practical exam without a portfolio, they're not going to be doing the exam because that is part of their evaluation. They can't do the evaluation if you don't have them. So, and as you can see, there's also a list here that bring the 5-page paper on the mentoring project and the JPRs to the examination site as well, all part of the portfolio. Now, we've had some confusion in the past exams whether we collect portfolios from the students and keep them or give them back to them. Give them back to them. We don't want them. We understand there's been in the past there was concern about, well, if you hand back portfolios to students, then other students can just rehash or use the same thing, change the name on the paper, et cetera, and that's probably one of the reasons why we took it from them. Well, we all know that when they're going to be making this on the computer, they're going to be writing their papers and all the projects on the computer, so it's not like we're going to take away their only copy. So one of the things we do teach in Fire Officer 1, and hopefully by Fire Officer 2, the ethics of the people that are in the class are going to be such that they're not going to just pass on their papers wholesale to people within their departments. That's all we can hope for. So that's the portfolio checklist. Let's talk about the implementation guide. And I'm not going to go through all of these guides page by page, but I will just show you that the implementation guide is what the first thing that you as an instructor should be looking at. It's got all the requirements for completing the certification process. It has a listing, a breakdown of the lessons, and some recommended amount of times that you should spend teaching these particular lessons. Again, these are recommendations. These are only recommendations. So we've got it broken down by chapters and the page numbers, etc., so you have an idea. And then when you get into the rest of the implementation guide, you're going to see a breakdown of what the chapter is going to be describing, what the goal of the chapter, what the goal of the lesson is, what the knowledge objectives are, the skill objectives, if there are any enhancements that are recommended for helping improve upon the delivery of that particular lesson, etc. So we've got that, every single lesson is listed. Now, if you scroll down to the back of the document, part of the implementation guide, you're going to find all of those sample worksheets or templates that I was talking about previously. So the budget worksheet, the memos, those are all listed in the implementation guide for your reference or for printing as well. So that's the implementation guide. That's the most important document that you should be looking at. Let's look at the certification preparation guide. This is for the students, and this is found on our website under our certification link in our website. And again, make sure your students know about this preparation guide. It tells them exactly what they need to do to successfully pass both the written and the practical exams. It also has the procedures, and then as you'll see, for the written exam, it has all the JPRs documented, and it has the chapters that references for that particular JPR where they can find that information, and it actually has the page references as well. So I don't know how we can spoon feed it even more to them, but it's all there. It's all there for them to help prepare them for the written exam. And then, as you bring it down, you're going to have all the particular the stations, the different stations that we're going to be doing at the practical exam. So while we're here, we can talk about this. Let's talk about the practical exam. There are going to be basically 2 stations where 6 different tests are going to be administered. Practical station, exam station number 1, is going to have test 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that's human resource management, community government relations, administration, health and safety. Now, if you look at this, you're going to see under human resource management, you'll see candidate will be tested on one of the 2 choices below. So that's going to be chosen either by the state rep or by the evaluator which one they're going to do. So as you can see, for test 1, they'll have the choice of either maximizing a member performance, correcting unacceptable performance, or they're going to be evaluating job performance of members and creating a professional development plan. One of those 2 are going to be chosen at the exam, and that's what the student will be evaluated on. Government relations, community and government relations, there's only one JPR, so there's only one choice. That's a portfolio item. So they're going to have a memo to the chief talking about cooperating with allied organizations. So they are going to be asked questions about that process as well as what they learned from that JPR. So there are going to be questions asked and the portfolio is going to be reviewed. Test 3 under administration, you'll see that every one of them is a portfolio item. So developing a policy procedure, transmittal to a report to the supervisor, developing a plan to accomplish change, project or divisional budget in the process of purchasing, or preparing a news release. They are going to have every one of these items in their portfolio ready to go, but they are only going to be tested on one of them. Either these 3 here under test 3A, or the 2 under 3B, or the 1 under 3C. Again, that's going to be chosen on the day of the exam. But they have to be prepared, well, first of all, having the item in their portfolio, and secondly, being prepared to discuss the process, what the expectations are, that type of thing. And then health and safety, you'll see that there's only one JPR, so it is a portfolio item, so they will be evaluated on their report about members' injury, accident, and exposures. The next practical station is Station 2, where only 2 tests are going to be done, and this is going to be producing an operational plan, developing and conducting a PIA. I'm going to tell you that that's what they're going to be evaluated on. Now, there is a portfolio item here, but I'm going to tell you that we want them to do the practical portion of producing an operational plan. Now, those of you that have taught Fire Officer 1 before, the old Fire Officer 1 course, or been an evaluator at the Officer 1 course, You'll know that we have a DVD that we use in that testing, which we still use for the new updated Fire Officer 1 testing. And we are going to be using that disc as well, but there's only one scenario that we're going to be using, and that's a multi-story hotel. And the reason we're only going to use that one is because the operational plan that we're looking for from them is that they are going to be an incident commander at a fire scene that's going to involve multiple agencies. So they're going to have to be familiar with the ICS, NIMS process, how to basically how to expand an incident that's going to go long term, that's going to involve other agencies that are coming on board. So that's going to be the focus of that particular scenario. They're not, they may do, they will be expected to do first in reports and placement of rigs and that type of thing, but then they're going to be playing the role of the IC. As this event gets larger, they'll be asked questions on what they're going to be doing in order to expand the incident. So that is what they will be tested on under Test 5. And then Test 6 is they are going to determine the point of origin and the cause of fire. So basically an investigation. That's where the investigation scenarios come in that I mentioned before. And there will be pictures, there will be scenarios that will be given to them that they will have to read through the information. It won't necessarily be on the multi-story hotel. In fact, I can tell you that it won't be. But they will be giving a different scenario with descriptions and all the information that they need to try to determine the cause and location of or point of origin. There will be pictures involved with that as well. So those two, so the practical exam station 2 is going to be all actual practical exam stuff. The station number 1, a lot of it is going to be the portfolio items that are going to be looked at. So that's the summary. That's how the practical exam is going to work. You will have access to the exam preview, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Well, actually, it's the same thing here. The exam preview that I mentioned is this exact same document. It just doesn't have all the other study hints for the student like this one has here. So as you can see, if you look at this first one, Test 1A, maximizing member performance, you'll see the description, and these are directions to the evaluator here. You'll see the description of the particular station, the evaluation guidelines, the JPR that's associated with it, as well as the textbook, and then it talks about the directions to the candidate that will be read to the candidate, and then we have our evaluation criteria using the same template, the same evaluation process that we use for all of our courses now. I'm happy to say that every one of our courses is using this same method of evaluating. So these are the items that you as an evaluator are going to be looking at, their portfolio items or during the practical session that they're going through. That's how you're going to evaluate. So this certification preparation guide for the students has all of this information, but again, it doesn't have the answers, keys, or prompts or suggested questions that will be listed in the exam administration handbook that will be available to the evaluators on the day of the exam. So every single test is, every test station, whether it's portfolio or practical, is going to be listed in this certification preparation guide, but also in the certification preview, the exam preview that's accessible to you as instructors. So please become familiar with everything that's in these documents so you can, and I'm not encouraging you to teach to the test. We don't ever want to do that, but you do need to know exactly what's going to be expected of them at the exam. So that's all laid out for you. Back to our website here, you're going to see some other forms that we have. Our PIA form that's going to be handed to them at the end of their practical exam. They're going to have to answer questions, how they would fill out the post-incident analysis form after the exam. Policy change memo template and a press release template, all available to you at this site here. So that's what our resources site looks like. That's where you should get all your information. And I would advise you that you know, if you teach this course, let's say you teach here this year in the spring semester, you don't teach again until the following spring semester, a year later, please go back and make sure you have the most up-to-date materials. Because I'll tell you that we do find mistakes. We are only human, and we will find some mistakes, and some of you will go through it, and you may have already been through some of this material already, looking at it. I sent out the link earlier this week. So you may already have some suggestions or questions or confusion about something that we'll have to change. And so we do make changes to both the lesson plans or the guides, the implementation guide or preparation guide. We do make changes to those periodically. Now when we do make a change like that, we are putting the date and the change that we made on the back page of the document, of the implementation guide. So if you don't teach this for another year, you want to come back to this website and download the most current material. This is where all the most current material is going to be. So please keep that in mind. Don't just use the same thing over and over for the next couple of years because it may have changed. Let me take a look at some of these other documents, make sure I'm covered everything. The practical skills examination preview is what I just got done talking about. It's the same thing that's in the student preparation guide. Here's the mentoring project document. So it's got directions to the mentor that they're going to be choosing. And I see that your view is a little bit behind my clicking here. So it's also got directions to the student on how they should use the mentor project. And then it has all of the checklist of what they're going to be doing. Now, we understand, and it says in the directions of both the mentoring project and the implementation guide, that we understand that the candidates are not going to be able to actually do every single JPR in a hands-on fashion. It's unrealistic, depending upon how busy or how slow a department is. They may not be able to do that. But what we are asking you as instructors to do is to encourage them to get as many of the JPRs done actually in a practical fashion if they can, but at least 2 or 3 of them need to be done in that fashion. The other ones may have to be just a discussion, a tabletop discussion with their mentor, and they can sign it off in that fashion as well. This document is not coming to us at the evaluation, so this is basically for them to, and you as an instructor, you should be reviewing this. If they come back at the end of the course and nothing is signed off, well, then they can't fill out they have not successfully completed the course. So they're going to have signatures on every one of these. It's just not going to be a matter of all going to be practically done. But you do need a signature on every one of these from their mentor that they've covered them in order to sign them off on the state summary form. So that's the mentoring project document, and that's all the other documents I've already covered. So let's go back here. All right. I already mentioned that you should check that instructor resource page every time you teach. Make sure you have the most up-to-date course or materials. You also need to stress to the students that they need to be aware of their organization's HR policies and procedures. They are going to be evaluated on some of the portfolio items. They're going to be evaluated or they're going to be expected to do fill out the reports and stuff basically based on their HR policies and procedures. When we're talking about discipline, purchasing, that type of thing. So make sure that they are aware of their community's HR, their policies, and if they don't have any, well, that's a good prompt for them to discuss it with their chief or with their leadership about what are they going to do in case some of these situations pop up if they don't have any policies and procedures in place. Question's been asked a few times. Yes. If you look at the Jones and Bartlett textbook, you'll know that all the Fire Officer 2 materials is listed with a green border. Well, the whole book itself is not very big to begin with, and then when you break it down to just Fire Officer 2 materials, there's not that much material in order to get test questions. So there is an expectation that when you get to an Officer 2 level, that you are familiar with the responsibilities of the Fire Officer 1 level. So I'm not saying that every single question in the Fire Officer 1, or questions for all kinds of questions for Fire Officer 1 are going to be on the exam, but there will be some. It's unavoidable. So there is an expectation. So when when a student comes up and says, "Is that all I have to study? Is just those green bordered?" You can tell them, "No, I would really get into the rest of the book and review it and be aware of all the responsibilities of a Fire Officer 1." Where they're not being tested all over on Fire Officer 1, but there will possibly be one or two questions on the exam that relate to those levels. So, that brings me pretty much close to the end here. It's the accreditation, RSAC accreditation, because we have to test every single JPR. That brought us to the point where we had to, figure out the best way to evaluate those. So the portfolio, there's a lot of work involved with the portfolio, but one of the JPRs in almost every JPR, one of the skills required is the ability to communicate orally and written, using the written word. So the portfolio does that, the paper does that, as well as our exams. So I'm going to open this up for questions right now. Any questions on any of the items that I just talked about? Or I've also got some of the committee members are on the line. So if the committee members, if I've missed something, please let me know. Don't forget to unmute your phones.
Pete, this is Marcy Trubshaw calling.
Hi, Marcy.
I'm just wondering how long you should allot, or what should be allotted per candidate for the exam, the practical.
Well, this is all brand new, so we do have time limits on the exam and handbook, and I believe we have 15 minutes for each of the stations.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Pete?
Yes.
This is Bob Stedman.
Yes.
Can I just comment to Marcy's question?
Sure.
That is, I would suggest, having everybody report at the same time and try and not do the exam by appointment thing. It just doesn't, it's better if the students are waiting than all the evaluators, and sometimes it goes much quicker than you expect.
That is correct, yep. Especially in the portfolio, because the portfolio is already done. So if you've got portfolio items like that one station where that it's all portfolio, the work is done. It's just asking questions to see if they really understand what they did, or if it was something that they copied from someone. So that's what they're going to be trying to get at, is that do they really understand how the budget was put together, or how a press release was put together. So that's not going to take long at all. So Chief Stedman is right, having everybody there and just waiting in the standing off to the side or waiting in the waiting area so that, you can keep them moving. So it's not going to take very long. Other questions?
Hey, Pete, it's Ken Schroeder.
Hi, Ken.
Hey. Quick question regarding, I haven't seen the implementation guide to the full extent, but is it up to the instructor as to when the paper is due and when it gets graded?
Yes, it is. Obviously, they've got until the end of the course, or you as an instructor can set the time requirement for when the mentoring project is due. It just needs to be done by the end of the course.
Okay. Another question is regarding prerequisites to take the course. Is it outlined, or can they take these courses out of sequence?
No, they have to be a Fire Officer 1 to take the Fire Officer 2 course.
Okay.
For certification. Anybody can take any of our courses at any time, but the certification, the prerequisite is that you have to be Fire Officer 1.
Okay, and is there after the completion of the course, again, I haven't seen the implementation guide, so after the completion of the course, is it up to 2 years before they can go for certification?
That is correct. Every one of our certification levels is the same way. They've got 2 years from the last date of the course, or I'm sorry, the last class in the course. From that date forward, they've got 2 years to complete the certification process.
Okay. Last question is regarding the evaluators for each station. So is it 2 evaluators for Station 1 and 2 for Station 2, or is it 2 per exam?
No, that's a good question. We want 2 evaluators at each station. So we've got 2 stations, so you should have a minimum of 4 evaluators, 2 in each. And that's essentially to kind of get the, a consensus between the evaluators. So if one evaluator is not quite sure if they believe that the person is matching the intent of that particular station, then I would ask the student to step out of the area and have the conversation between the 2 instructors and come to an agreement on whether yay or nay. So, but yes, two evaluators for each of the stations.
Okay, Pete, I'm all questioned out. Thank you very much.
Welcome. And you just reminded me of something that I forgot to add to the PowerPoint, and it is very important. We did add another prerequisite. Not only do you have to be Fire Officer 1 certified, but you also have to complete an online course. It's the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation's Leadership, Accountability, Culture, and Knowledge, the LAC program. And that's on the state summary form. That information is in the implementation guide as well as in the certification preparation guide. So we did add an online component that they're going to have to complete that course online. It only takes a couple hours, but then they can download the certificate of completion once they complete that, and the instructors will have to verify that they have the certificate, and they can then sign that off on the state summary form. We added that to the Fire Officer 1 as well, so we're trying to capture everyone, trying to increase the awareness of the NSSS programs that they have, and this particular program I think is very important for a chief officer or any officer to understand. So that has been added as well. I forgot to add that to the PowerPoint. Any other questions?
Pete.
Yes.
Jack Running here.
Hi, Jack.
Just wanted to say thanks for everything you've done for the fire training service in Wisconsin while you were here. Just appreciate your efforts.
Thank you very much, Jack. I appreciate that. Any other questions? Well, with that, I do want to thank all of you for your support, suggestions over these past 6 years. I've really have enjoyed this role. Moving on to a different role now, but I'll still be around. I'll be serving as a state rep at practical exams here and there, so I'll see a lot of you out there. And this last slide is for some friends that are on the line right here. Had a conversation. There we go. I'm out of here. Thank you all very much. That is the end of this program.